What we want to do now is long-term reporting. So Savvius has partnered with Splunk. We are a technology partner, and we have developed a set of Splunk dashboards, which we're going to present to you today. The data in these Splunk dashboards is the data coming from our Omni appliances. So it's the same data that you are familiar with that you see in OmniPeak, but you in the Splunk dashboards, you will be able to see that data over long periods of time and in different ways. So the first thing I'm going to do is give you a little introduction to Savvius. Kind of just took care of that. And next we're going to talk about data acquisition, because that is the key to being able to get data into Splunk. And I'll show you and talk a little bit about the different ways to set up your Omni appliances or your Omni engines for Windows such that you can get that data into Splunk. Then we're going to talk about the long-term reporting with Splunk, some of the benefits, talk about some of the architectures, show you a few of the dashboards, and then we'll go right into the demo and we'll open it up for questions and answers. So, take notes along the way. If you have an important question, feel free to throw that in. We'll also be answering all of your questions at the end as well. So, first of all, Savvius Solutions. What we offer are Omni appliances and software for capturing network traffic and doing analysis. As well, we are well known for our ability to do high-speed capture to disk, but that is not the use case here. What we're looking to do is put our Omni appliances in the data center as well as on the edges and give you much better visibility into the overall network and to be able to get trends on that information as well. So as you can see, we offer multiple Omni appliances as well as software. Our software is available for trial. If you're interested in installing and taking everything that we're about to show you on a test run, then you can contact us. We can get you the Omni software for Windows trial, and then of course you can download the Splunk for free. To begin with. There is a free version called the Splunk Community Edition, which will allow you to ingest 500 megabytes of data per day, which should be plenty for any trial. So today, though, we're going to talk about the Omni appliances plus Splunk, which we believe will give you better actionable insight. And what this means is your ability to make important decisions based on the kinds of data that you can see in these Splunk dashboards. Not just the data that we provide you, but with the ability to correlate that data with other data from either other machines or other data from your business. And the way that we do that is we have the Omni appliances that do the network traffic analysis. And then we have Splunk, which aggregates that analysis into a Splunk server. And then we've developed Splunk dashboards to actually display the data. Now, for those of you who are familiar with our Omni appliances or our Windows Omni engines, you'll recognize the dialog here on the left. And that really is the key to enabling our Splunk integration. That is our statistics output dialog, and it's been around, for a while. And what it allows you to do is take all of the analysis that's being performed by the Omni engine and export that at some interval, as you can see here, some interval to CSV, and then it will reset the statistics after the output. So these captures that you're using for Splunk integration aren't going to be real useful for looking at an OmniPeak, because at whatever interval you set, the statistics are going to be reset at that interval. So let's say you've got, as I'm showing here, a 10-minute interval, then the statistics in the Omni engine are going to be reset every 10 minutes. But in Splunk, you'll be able to see those statistics over long periods of time. We'll come back to this dialogue when we're actually looking at OmniPeak. And then, of course, all that data goes over to Splunk. So some of the benefits of this solution? Well, of course, at a high level, what we're providing here is long-term reporting and alerting, something that our customers have been asking for a long time. And so instead of developing one from the ground up, what we've decided to do is integrate with the most popular and well-known long-term reporting solution out there, Splunk. And it does leverage Savvius's extensive analysis capabilities. If you're familiar with Omni engines, you know we have hundreds of experts. We have flows and nodes and protocols. We have application data, and we have durations of all of those things, as well as hundreds of different summary statistics, all of which can go into Splunk and all of which we can make dashboards for. So the other advantage is that you can integrate all of the statistics from your multiple Omni appliances into Splunk. While with OmniPeak, you connect directly to an Omni appliance and do that analysis. With Splunk, you can integrate all the analysis from all your Omni appliances into your centralized Splunk dashboard and see it from a single web page. Big data benefits, operational intelligence, actionable insights, business analytics. These are all of the high-level benefits that you can get once your data is in Splunk, and hopefully you will realize some of that when we go through the demo. So why did we choose Splunk? Well, as a platform, it scales, it provides you with analytics, and it can be implemented in the cloud. You can install your own Splunk infrastructure and send all the data to it, or you can subscribe to Splunk Cloud and configure your Omni engines and Omni appliances to send the data up into the Splunk Cloud, and then you don't have to worry about managing Splunk at all. You just log into Splunk and all your data is there. Of course, because it's Splunk, the UI is web-based. That makes it accessible from any web browser, and it makes it accessible from different types of people within the organization, whether they're different tiers of support or whether they're the executive staff. Everybody now has access to the data. And then there's, of course, the ecosystem. Splunk is ubiquitous. There are many different apps. Last I checked, there were over 600 apps. And the community around Splunk is very passionate about it. So there are lots of resources for doing things with Splunk and with our data inside of Splunk. Just as you can see here, I love to do Google Trends, and as you can see, since 2005, Splunk has been trending very well. So I think it was a good choice for us to pick Splunk. So about long-term reporting and aggregation. As I mentioned before, one of the benefits is to be able to select any Omni appliance. And in this case, I've got a screenshot here showing how you can select one Omni appliance or another Omni appliance, and we'll go into more detail about that. And then another big benefit is the ability to select any range of time. If you're an OmniPeak user, you know that when you're looking at statistics in OmniPeak, when you start to capture, the statistics begin, they're cumulative, and you really can't get a good idea of when something actually happened unless you actually look at the packets. Well, in Splunk, that changes where you can look at any of the analysis over time for any period of time. So last slide here, architectural diagram, just a real, if you're wondering, well, how is all this set up? Just an example, the architecture, could be many variations of this, but here we're just showing an Omni appliance TL in the data center, in a capture engine for OmniPeak, and then a couple of CX boxes out on the edge in different branch offices, all sending data to a Splunk server and then using the Savvius dashboards for Splunk to actually view that data. So with that, let's go on over to my Savvius dashboards, and I'm going to bring over my web browser here. And here we go. We are now inside the UI for Splunk, and I just happen to have set my default dashboard to be one of our dashboards, the location dashboard. But real quick, before we go into the details of the dashboard, if you're familiar with Splunk, you'll recognize over to the left here the navigation bar with all the different apps. When you install Savvius for Splunk, you will see that it appears here as one of the applications. And you may be asking, well, how do I do that? I mean, once you've installed Splunk, or you're in your Splunk cloud, you will then go to the apps. You can click this Manage Apps button here, and this will take you to a view where you have your apps, and then you can install the app from a file, or you can browse the apps from Splunk base. And that's an important point because our apps are actually up on Splunk base, and I'll just real quickly show you that in Splunk base. All you have to do is go Savvius, and our apps will come up, and there are 3 entries here on Splunk base. The dashboards themselves are Savvius network dashboards, and you download those and install them into Splunk. And then there are 2 other entries in splunkbase.com. They're called TA Savvius Win and TA Savvius Nix. The TA means technology add-on, and these are the files that get installed into the Splunk forwarder that is going to be placed on your Omni appliance. So you've got a Splunk server. That is where the dashboards are, and then you've got your Splunk forwarder, which is also a Splunk utility that you download and install onto either your Omni appliance or the machine running your capture engine. If you're running an Omni appliance, you will install this TA Savvius Nix, and if you're running a capture engine for Windows, you'll install this TA Savvius Win. That may not be completely clear, but all the documentation for installing the dashboards and the Savvius Nix can be found in the documentation section of the entry that is on Splunk base. So I'll be looking forward to your questions about that when you start the process of installing, and I will be supporting all of those questions as well. So back to the dashboards. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Savvius for Splunk entry, and these are the list of dashboards that we have so far. Of course, we will continue developing more dashboards and improving these as well. This is version 1.0 of our dashboards. There are a couple different categories of dashboards. There are ones that we actually call dashboard, and those are high-level dashboards made up of the different kinds of metrics in a particular category. Then there are lists of things like events and flows and nodes. Then there are the comparison dashboards that are like baseline dashboards, and there are response times. So first of all, let's start with the high-level dashboard. The most general dashboard is going to be the one we call the network dashboard, and it is going to be similar to the network dashboard that you're used to in the OmniPeak UI, except here you're looking at the data in a web browser. And if I actually had, I do, I have 2 Omni appliances feeding this Splunk server. So the data is actually aggregated. If I only wanted to look at the data for one of them, then I would choose, in this case, Space Packet PC, and I would choose one of them, and I would only see the data for that. So I can aggregate the data from multiple Omni appliances, or I can look at them individually. So the other pull down here is the time range. You'll notice that by default, the time range is the last 1 hour. That's somewhat arbitrary, just decided that would make most sense to, when the dashboards come up, to view the last hour of activity. This is very customizable, though. You can look at just about any time period in the presets. You can see last 15 minutes, 24 hours, yesterday, last month, so on and so forth. You can also be very specific about the date and time range and enter exactly the range you want. So once you've selected your time range, then on most of the dashboards you will see something like this at the top. In this case, it's network utilization. And you can see for the last hour, this is our network utilization. And from here, I can actually select a range of time like so. And whatever range of time I select, all of the other widgets down below, or panels, I should say, will reflect the period of time that I have just selected. So in this case, for network utilization, we've chosen a couple of panels that, again, are similar to what you would see in our own network dashboard. There's packet size distribution. There are the number of the volume of, or the number of flows over time. There are the number of events by severity and the number of events over time. And then there are, of course, our top protocols in a pie chart and our top protocols over time, as well as top tuckers in a pie chart and our top tuckers over time. Now, these, I'll say right off the bat that, I put this dashboard together. This is a network dashboard. It's made up of a couple of statistics from the Omni engine, but it is 100% customizable. I could take this dashboard and I could clone the dashboard and then make some changes to it, or I could say edit panels, and I can change just about everything you can imagine. I can get rid of panels. I can change the graph on the panels to be anything I want. I can change the search string, the title. There's really very little. I haven't found anything about the graph that you can't change. So that's very exciting. The idea here is we're giving you a set of dashboards to start with. We will continue to embellish them and add more dashboards. But what we're trying to do is give you a platform that you can create your own dashboards from. And as you can see with this very WYSIWYG UI, it is very easy to do. So that is the network dashboard, and the theme of this dashboard is similar to the other dashboards. So I will go ahead and go back to our set of dashboards. That was the network dashboard, and then the next dashboard I'd like to show you is along the lines of security. In the Omnippliances, we have lots of different experts that are security related. For example, we have experts on Kerberos, EAP, DNS. We have storm-related experts. And what you're seeing here in the security dashboard is not just the volume of Kerberos activity or the volume of DNS activity. These are experts that are saying, something isn't right. We don't have experts that say, hey, this is going along just great. You don't need to look at it. If you see an expert, then it's probably something you need to check out. For example, in the case of Kerberos requests rejected, we're showing that we actually have some connections, some Kerberos connections that are getting rejected. That is not something that you want to happen, so you would want to drill down. So immediately, and as is the case with all of the dashboards, because you're probably wondering, well, what if I see something that doesn't look quite right? How do I drill down into it? How do I then try to solve the problem? In any dashboard in Splunk, you can click, as I'm doing here, on a time period in the dashboard, and it will take you to the actual events. It will take you to the actual events for that dashboard, and you can then see the specifics of that. In this case, we can see where the data came from. We can see different statistics about the data, and as is often the case with our experts, you can actually see the IP addresses, which you might then start OmniPeak and go in and do a search on the package and use OmniPeak to solve the problem. At a minimum, of course, you can always see the date and time for these events, so you could use OmniPeak to do a forensic search on that engine and go in with OmniPeak. The idea behind these dashboards is to give you a high-level view of your network, as well as to give access to that view to other members of your organization, but in many cases, you will then be drilling down into the actual packets with OmniPeak. But hopefully, we'll be giving you enough information that you can solve the problem with these dashboards as well. Just to give you some idea of the other types of security-related experts, and I just picked these out of the experts that we have. It says a collection of summary statistics and experts. We have storms. I seem to not have any DHCP request storms, which is good, but I do have some ARP request storms. And then we also have TCP connection refused over time, as well as some ICMP. Anytime you have ICMP errors, whether it's prohibited or destination unreachable, probably something that you want to check out as well. So there are other types of statistics, summary stats, and experts that could be added to this dashboard as well. And this data, by the way, and any data in any of your dashboards can not only be looked at as a graph over time, but you can create alerts on any of this data so that if it exceeds a threshold for some period of time or some arbitrarily complex condition, then you can be alerted on that through email or other ways. I will touch on that a little bit later in the presentation. So back to the dashboards. Trying to make our way through these. Let's look at the application events dashboard. So with OmniPeak 9.0, application events, here we go. With OmniPeak 9.0, we've introduced a new feature called application awareness. And with application awareness, we can look deeper into applications than, for example, just HTTP. And so we can see into whether the traffic is Yahoo, Salesforce, Dropbox, or whatever, and that provides better visibility into what's actually happening on your network, since most of the traffic on our network these days is HTTP, is web traffic. In this case, we're looking at application-related events. So they're not necessarily security, but these would be layer 7 events. This gives you an idea of our Omnippliance's ability to do layer 7 analysis, where you've got DHCP events, the DHCP request rejected. We've got some more DNS events, ICMPs. Now, these are POP3. Now, in this case, it's really a network performance related event where we would have slow response time, which in this case we can see we don't, so that's a good thing. Here is something similar. It's SMTP. We have SMTP, slow response time, and you probably recognize these events from OmniPeak, where you would see them in the log or you'd see them associated with flows. In this case, we're showing them as an application events dashboard. And then we've got some other ones here, which I actually don't have any of that type of traffic. And you could add as many of these types of panels to this application events dashboard as you wanted to. The last dashboard I'll show you is actually I have one more, but I'm going to show you the VoIP dashboard. This is also very similar to the VoIP dashboard in OmniPeak. As you can see at the top, we've got call volume, and then we've got our open calls, current calls, and closed calls over time. And we've got our average call duration in seconds, and of course our MOS scores over time. We've got our codecs in a pie chart, and then our codecs shown over time. If we were to look at the OmniPeak console, you'd see that, again, very similar to the VoIP dashboard that we have in the console. Now, since we're on the VoIP dashboard, let's just go ahead to our first list style. Oh, wait, we're not going to do that yet because I still got a couple dashboards to show, but we will be looking at the individual VoIP calls in case you're wondering where those were. I did show you briefly our our world map. Now, this is an example of something you can't actually do in the same way as we can do in Splunk. We're using Splunk's ability to take IP addresses and map them to a world map. Now, in OmniPeak 9.0, I will point out that we have added geolocation. So actually from within the OmniPeak console, you can see where traffic is coming from by name. We don't actually show it in a map, but we do show you what countries they're coming from. In Splunk, though, you can see for any period of time where that traffic is coming from visually, which could be used as a marketing tool, a security tool, or lots of other applications. And in any case, or I should say for any one of these dots, you can highlight it and you can see the IP addresses and the number of bytes that are coming and going from that location. So we can look over here at Hawaii and we can see those are the IP addresses and that is their traffic activity. So lots of different applications that you can do with the world map. I, in this case, am just plotting bytes and packets, but for example, you might show errors or security experts in the map. They're all very easy to do. If we have some time in the end, I'll actually go into one of these dashboards and show you the very simple searches that are used to populate the dashboards. And if I don't have time in this presentation, we'll probably have a presentation dedicated to creating new dashboards in Splunk for Savvius. So there's the world map dashboard. Last dashboard I want to show you is one I'm working on right now. So this actually is a dashboard that doesn't come yet with the default set that we're shipping. This is a web dashboard that I'm working on, and actually you'll see that I cloned it from the network utilization dashboard. So the bottom widgets are still network utilization, but I've changed the top to be, instead of network utilization, it's web URLs. So you're seeing the number of URLs over time, and that is the result of looking at or asking Splunk to look at the experts that we provide on URLs. You probably have seen, HTTP entries in your event log in OmniPeak. Well, in this case, all of those are getting sent to Splunk, and we can display those over time. We also have HTTP errors, server errors, and client errors, and that is actually what I'll be putting into these other panels. Just haven't quite got to that yet. So now let's look at a couple of the list dashboards. Let's start with flows. Everybody loves flows. It's a very important feature of the OmniPeak console. You look at your flows, and from the flows in the OmniPeak console, you can use the visual expert, and you can really drill down, of course, all the way into the package. Now, in Splunk, we're not able to drill down that far into the flows because we don't actually have the packets. We have the flow data, and from there, there's still lots of things we can do, though. So here you can see I've changed the top graph from network utilization to flow volume, and so you can see at a glance what your flow volume looks like. And then down below are the flows for the period of time selected. So if I select this period of time here, then we'll see the flows for that. And let's go through some of these, or let's go through one. You can see that what we're displaying are the primary tuples. We've got the client address, the client port, the server address, the server port, the protocol. Then we've got the response times. And then what we've done is actually added a spark line showing the activity for that flow. And spark lines are very cool because at a glance they let you see the activity for a statistic in a single, line, so you can do that for multiple lines. And you can very easily create a Spark line out of any statistic in Splunk, and you'll see some other examples of that soon. And for each flow, we have the bytes and packets. Now, as you know, in OmniPeak, or in the Omnippliance, we have lots of other statistics about flows. These are the fields that that I've decided to add. You can see there's more room for others. If you click on this particular event, or I should say this flow, we'll see flows for that range of time. And if I open up this event or this flow, you can see there are lots of fields. This is similar to right-clicking in the OmniPeak console in the flows view and seeing all of the different fields for a flow. Any one of these can be added to the dashboard. I'll show you how to do that. And any one of these can, you can do an amazing number of things with any of these stats. There's so many things you can do with data once it's inside of Splunk. So if we go back real quick, I will give you just a little insight into what the search looks like. Here I've just said edit source for this particular dashboard. It's all in XML, and here's for the flow volume. This is the query that created that flow volume, and for the actual flows, this is the query that we used to create the flows, and this is called the Splunk query language. It's relatively easy to understand. You don't have to know anything about it because you can just use our dashboards, but once you start customizing and creating your dashboards, it definitely pays to understand this language so that you can make your own dashboards. Here's where I created that Spark line. All I said was, hey, give me a Spark line, which is the sum of my received bytes. Simple enough. So back to our dashboard. So that's the list of flows. The other lists are very simple. Oh, one thing I should mention here. I'm going to go back to our list of flows. As you can see here in this dashboard, I've added an IP address filter. Now, I think I know one of the IP addresses on this network. And so if you know the IP address or even a subnet, then you can enter that right here, and let's see, and there it is. So here's all the flows for 10.4.2.18. It is very easy to add new types of filters. I love this. You can just go, hey, give me another one of these guys. I can go into my edit, call it what I want. It's going to be a variable name, and then I add that right into that query that I showed you. So you can have all kinds of different filters in your dashboard. And in fact, if you happen to have taken a good long look at that query, the majority of it was just the variables that I had added from these text inputs, and then there was the query itself. So let's get rid of that again. Don't want to mess up my dashboard. And let's go back to dashboards, and then we'll look at a couple of these others. Just for example, if we look at a list of protocols, the rest of these are very similar to the OmniPeak console. We've got protocols and we've got nodes. Here you can see in the case of our own network, most of our traffic is retrospect. Again, I've added a Spark line. So for any one of these protocols, you can very easily, at a glance, see the activity of that protocol. I really like that. And then, of course, you can see the bytes and packets. You can see you can sort by any column, of course. So I could change my sort to be by bytes and packets. Or I could actually sort by the name as well. I have not, but I could easily add a filter here to filter. Maybe I just wanted to see ARPs. So I could filter for ARP, and just the ARPs would show up. because there may be lots of protocols. In this case, there's only 2 pages, so it's not too bad. You can see here's all the protocols show up. Again, if I were to click on any one of those, I could go see the events themselves and all the fields associated with the protocol entry, and I could add other fields to this particular dashboard. And by the way, of course, if you download these dashboards and you would like us to add other fields or you have any feedback about these dashboards, we're very open to that, and we can make those changes for you as well. A couple of other lists. Let's see. There's protocols, nodes. Let's look at, real quick, event trends. In OmniPeak, we have lists of event types. So here are different types of expert events. Here we're just showing the count of the different types of events, not every single event, so you can see at a glance, and as it is already sorted by the events that you're getting the most of. In this case, we're getting segment, act, but missing, along with stuck window and low window, of course, slow server response time, and so on and so forth. Another type of events dashboard is the all events dashboard. In this case, we are showing all the events. This may actually take a little longer to populate because it's not a summary of the events. It's every single event. So here's the events, and we're populating our spark line here. Again, this is just for the last hour. I also have a filter because there are lots of different events. So we might say, I'm really only interested in TCP events. So we can, we can filter on TCP, and there are TCP events. In this case, we have the source IP, source port, dest IP, and dest port of those events, just like you would have if you were looking at these events in your log in the OmniPeak console. And then in this case, if you really needed to drill down, you could go to OmniPeak and you could do a forensic search on this 4-tuple here, or any one of these IPs, and get the packets for that and drill down further. The last list style dashboard that I'd like to show you is our summary stats, because we have so many summary stats, and summary stats is also a way in the Omnippliance that is relatively easy to extend. You can actually add your own summary stats. We do, though, have hundreds of them, and we have different groups. You probably recognize some of these groups. We have email analysis. Of course, we have the expert, FTP, ICMP. So we have lots of different groups. And, for example, in the web group, we have the web URLs. And, we've had a lot of web URLs for this past hour. And then we also have the majority of our summary stats are stats about expert events. And, I should probably add a filter as here. Well, so we go group and filter, very easy to do. So here are all the summary stats, and you can not only display them over time like we're doing here, but these are also good opportunities to create alerts on thresholds of summary stats. If utilization or response time was low for some period of time, then send me an email. Though that is easy to do in Splunk. So moving on, let's look at our application response time. This gets to the point I was making earlier about our new ability to go beyond HTTP. In this case, we're not looking at utilization here. We're looking at the amount of time it took for a request to get a response, which is these days what more people are interested in, because we all have lots of utilization, but still something slow, and the response time is more telling for that. And you can see here, we're not just looking at HTTP. We actually got Amazon traffic, and there's probably BBC and Bing and, all the websites that we're looking at, we're getting individual response time trends for. So that's a whole new dimension to our product line, which is available, of course, through the OmniPeak console, as well as available in our Splunk dashboards. So very excited about that new capability. If you haven't tried it before, or if you're still using a earlier version of OmniPeak or OmniEngine 8.1, 8.0, or 8.1, we highly recommend you upgrade to our latest version 9.0 so you can take advantage of application awareness. So we also do the same thing with flows. I won't go into that because it's just showing flows and the response times for those. The last dashboard that I want to show you is one I'm really excited about, which is our comparison dashboards. Actually, there is one other one I'm saving for the finale, but here, these are very useful because let's look at compare network utilization. They allow you to compare any statistic with the same statistic for a different period of time. So hopefully I have enough data to demonstrate this. Let's see. I don't actually have days because I think I reset things, so I'm going to change that. Let's see. I'll let it finish. Oh, I do. Fantastic. Okay, I at least have some. But here, again, you choose your capture engine. Now, in this case, you're going to choose your time span. You can go hours, days, weeks, months. I think you can actually go minutes as well, so I could add that to the pull down. And then you say, how many of those time spans do you want to compare? So let's just say, well, in this case, it's days, and I'm comparing 2 days. I'm comparing today with yesterday. And my in this case, I've gone ahead and let you choose whether it's bytes or packets, and the default is bytes. So this is hugely important. It's a form of baselining where I can now say, okay, well, let's compare my network utilization for today with my network utilization for yesterday. This could also be events. I could compare my security-related events for today with my security-related events for yesterday, or my response times for today with yesterday, or this week with last week, or this month with last month, and so on and so forth. I've done a couple of these comparison dashboards. For example, we can look at the application response time comparison dashboard, in which case we're not looking at utilization. We're looking at, again, the response time of our network or our applications compared to, in this case, yesterday. And I'm just doing 2 days, but you can go up to 7 days. And in this case, it could be average response time, best response time, or worst response time. And I'm doing defaulting to average. So you can see, let's see, I think it's almost done, that my average response time, and by the way, this is real network data. This is, I've got collecting this from our own network. And, it's normalizing itself once it got all the data. And this is probably what I want to see. I wouldn't want to see too much deviation unless I had made a correction to the network and I was hoping to see an improvement. But in this case, you could see that the response time for my applications is pretty similar between today and yesterday, other than this little deviation here. So that is very interesting. And then one other comparison dashboard that I've done is the VoIP calls comparison. This is similar, except we're looking at VoIP duration, and we could look, though, as well at MOS scores. and packets. So comparing MOS scores of calls between today and yesterday could be very interesting as well. It could also put a filter here, so it could be based on a particular IP address or a subnet or, something about the call. But there you go. There's my comparison of the duration of calls between yesterday and today. Let's take a quick look at MOS scores for those VoIP calls, just because I'm interested in seeing what they look like. So there's our MOS scores between 1 and 5, and you can see they don't deviate too much. Our MOS scores are not too low for any of the days. So again, these are just examples of comparison dashboards. You could take any summary statistic or any statistic that I've shown you, any expert, and you could clone one of these dashboards and easily change the query so that it's any one of those statistics. And if there's one you want us to do, please just let us know. So moving on to, there's the comparison dashboards. I did miss one down here. I did say I was going to show you the VoIP calls, so I'm going to go bring up this list of VoIP calls. Earlier I showed the VoIP dashboard showing the high-level panels of dashboard statistics. Here is the list of actual calls. There's a lot more information about each of these calls. I've just added these so far, but you've got your call number, your call status, the call ID, the address, the caller address, the callee address, the codec that was used, the media type, start, duration, and of course the MOS score. That could be customized in any way you want. And for my finale, one of my favorite dashboards is the network forecast dashboard. This is the dashboard that predicts the future. And this is a standard feature of Splunk, predictive analysis. It's not actual magic. It just does a forecast of the statistic based on what it knows about that statistic from the past. So the more data you have from the past, the further into the future you can forecast what the trend for that statistic will be. Now this is just last hour. Let's go presets, and let's say, let's see, today is Wednesday. If we go week to date, let's try month to date. This may take a little too long to actually populate, so I might come back to it. But the point of this is to show you that if we have a month's worth of data or even a year's worth of data, we'll be able to forecast a trend for that. And why would you have this? Well, if you're looking to decide what network resources that you need to purchase or allocate, whether it's for your cloud or for your on-premises network, this can just be another tool that you can use to help make those decisions. So why don't we let that run? And while it's running, I want to go ahead and open it up for questions. Gabe, do we have any questions so far?
Yes, we do. We've got a few questions. The first one is, on the dashboard, do we have the ability to change the background color from white to something darker?
Absolutely. Right. You can definitely change all the colors. Everything about the UI can be customized. Now, some customizations are easier than others. Changing colors is trivial, so that's something that's easy to do. If you wanted to change the fonts or the size of the fonts or things like that, then it could be a little bit more involved, but it can be done. What the dashboards that we're using now are called, they're XML dashboards. So earlier I said edit source, and you saw the XML that described the dashboard, and that's these are beginner dashboards, and I'm somewhat of a beginner myself, so it makes it very easy to work with this high-level XML description of the dashboard. However, you can take any dashboard and you can convert it to its HTML form. Once you've converted it to HTML form, the HTML for that XML is generated, it becomes your dashboard, and from then on, you can do anything you want with that HTML. And of course, we know, if you know anything about HTML, you can change colors, you can change just about everything about the web page. It is, at its core, a web page. So the answer to that is a definite yes.
Great, thank you. Another question on alerting. Is there alerting capability? If so, how are alerts generated based on the data captured?
Excellent question. And I totally forgot about reports and alerts. and I don't have a lot to show with respect to those, but let's see, while this is going on, I don't want to stop that, so I'm going to go to a new window, and I will show you the alert that I have defined so far, the standard and obvious alert for network utilization. So let's go to our alerts, and let's see, I've got one here called network utilization is greater than 90%. So as I was saying earlier, you can take any statistic and you can create an alert out of it. And that's what I did here. I created a new alert, and I gave it a trigger condition that is a custom condition, which is searching my max bytes greater than 90. So if we look at that, we can see the details about this alert, like what alert type it is, whether it's scheduled or it's real time. So you could be running this on every event coming in, or you could run it at some scheduled time. In this case, I'm saying, okay, let's have a scheduled event. We're going to run it every hour, and it's custom. So they do have a couple of built-ins like results, number of hosts, sources, but I did custom, and I said search max bytes is greater than 90, and this is part of the scripting language that I was referring to earlier, and it allows me to express arbitrarily complex conditions. So very powerful. I will certainly be adding more of these types of alerts. The goal here is to give you all of the alerts that we already have in OmniPeak. One of the advantages of doing alerts in Splunk is that they're all centralized. Let's say you've got 10 Omniplances out there, or 30 or 50. Rather than having to define your alerts on each one of those Omniplances, you can define the alert once in Splunk where all of the analysis is going, and then you'll get alerts for all of those different Omniplances from the Splunk side instead. So that is, there's a lot of advantage to that. And then there's a couple of others that are actually have leaked into my application from other applications, but this is the one that I defined. There are also, real quick, go ahead.
Yeah, follow up to that.
Great.
Question that just came in real time. Do the custom condition support entering in regex?
Yes, everything in Splunk supports regex. Some of my own dashboards are using regular expressions in order to extract fields from our events that you can then do conditions on. So yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. I went over to reports, and I don't actually have any of my own, but these are reports from other applications. The point to make about reports is that any dashboard can be converted to a report. In fact, we'll go over here to our dashboards. Let's look at the network dashboard. And if we go, let's go to network utilization here. And let's see, you can, from here, you can save as a report. So you can take any statistic or any dashboard and turn it into a report. So what I've been showing you so far is, real-time dashboard. It's like, okay, I'm looking at the web page, populate the dashboard and show it to me. You can take that dashboard and you can say, I want to, at midnight or every hour or at whatever interval, I want to turn this dashboard into a report and have it sent to me as a PDF, for example. So you can do that. Let's real quick go back to my network forensics. Let's see. So we seem to be done. You can see here for month to date, here's the days of network utilization that it knew about, and it's forecasting a trend for 3 days into the future. Now, as you can see, my network utilization didn't vary much, so neither does my trend, although it did see that it starts to go down a bit in the last couple of days. So there's a slight decline, but not much in my prediction for network utilization. Now, there's actually a couple of different options for the predictive analysis algorithm that you can select from. And so if you get to know those, then you can fine tune that a little bit. Any more questions, Gabe?
One more final question. The Splunk forwarder that you showed in the architecture diagram, do those forwarders place any additional load, if any, on the appliances?
That is really a great question because it allows me to point out that as most of you probably know from our best practices, running analysis itself on Omni engines does create an extra load. So if you are already at your max on your Omni appliance doing capture to disk, and that's critical, then you want, of course, to be very careful about turning on extra analysis. We actually recommend having a separate box or a separate instance of our Omni engine to do the analysis than to do the CTD if your rates are at the max. But let's say you've got a CX and but your rates are under a gig, then you're going to have no problem doing all the analysis and the CTD because the CX can do up to around 4 gigs. But to the point directly, I have not in all of my testing seen any effect on or noticeable impact of the Splunk forwarder, right? Because we're, at some interval, whether it's 1 minute or 10 minutes, we are outputting the CSV files, and the Splunk forwarder, its only job is to pick those CSV files up at whatever that interval is and send them off to the Splunk server. So, by definition, there has to be some load, but it's going to be on a separate thread, and it seems to be minimal. So I have not noticed any. Great question. Thank you.
Great. Very good.
Is that it?
That is it. No further questions.
Excellent. Well then, thank you very much, Gabe, for those questions. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on today's network, our workshop on Splunk. This is our first series on Splunk. I'm looking forward to more on generating reports, generating alerts, creating new dashboards, and of course updating you as often as possible on the new dashboards that we create. So please stay tuned for those, and please download the Splunk dashboards from the splunkbase.com. Keep in mind that you need the Splunk dashboards on your Splunk server, and you will need either the TA Savvius Win or the TA Savvius Nix to be installed with the Splunk forwarder on your Omni Engine machine or your Omnippliance. If you have any questions, please feel free to send us an email, go to our support forums, or email me directly at bloom@savvius.com, and I will help you out. Once again, thank you, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, Chris. You too.
Sure. Thank you, Gabe.